Hello and welcome to my art channel. I normally do time-lapse videos on here, but today for this video I thought I would do something a bit different. I wanted to add a new series onto my channel, not quite a tutorial series per se, but more of just an opportunity for artists to draw along with someone else. And so today I figured that I could post a video about my drawing process for a recent piece of concept art that I completed for an Enchanted Dagger for one of my game development projects. So if you would like to draw along with me, then feel free to stick around. I will say that you don't have to follow along with this exact concept if you don't want to. If you want to just take my design as inspiration to draw something else in terms of a dagger design, you can feel free to do that. Or if maybe you don't even feel like following along with the dagger prompt at all, you just want a video going in the background to maybe have some background noise, or just to feel like you're drawing along with someone. If you kind of want to body double in that aspect, then feel free to do that. For this part of the concept, what I usually do is come up with a rough sketch, and then I will take the rough sketch and I will define the idea on top of it. I don't always use quite the same technique when I am in the initial sketching phase. If I'm doing a more illustrative piece, sometimes I will just go straight from the sketch into blocking out the colors and working on the form. Other times I will take the rough sketch and do a refined line art on top of it, and then from there I will start building form and adding color, all that good stuff. Oh, if you were curious, I am using the program Paint Tool Sci. It's a pretty simplistic program, and there is a Paint Tool Sci 2 that has come out in recent years. I personally prefer using Paint Tool Sci. It serves its purpose for me, especially since when I first started working as transitioning from traditional art to digital art. Most of my life up until this point, I'd been strictly a traditional artist. Not because I didn't like digital art. Some of my favorite artists growing up when I was younger were digital artists. It's just that I wasn't quite sure if digital art was something that I wanted to get into. In 2014, I bought my first Wacom tablet. I downloaded the free open source GIMP program and then started experimenting. And over the years, I tried out different programs and to see what I would like, what I didn't like. And the reason why I stuck with Sci is because, coming from a traditional background, I felt that Sci's more simplistic interface allowed me to better simulate how I would draw or ink or sketch traditionally. And I'm sure there's plenty of other programs that people feel that they can do that exact same thing with. But it's just for me personally, because I don't like to use a lot of tools. I don't like to use a lot of different brushes or filters or masks or any extra tools that you would get, like from, say, Photoshop or from Krita. And I do like these programs. I have tried them out. In the end, I gravitated towards Sci because it's very simplistic, and the only brushes that I use are the base brushes that you get that are pre-downloaded with the program, and that's what I use to render. And in this case, for this piece of concept art, usually when I work on concept art, I'm working with multiple layers. Normally I just work on one layer if I'm doing an illustrative piece, like say if I wanted to paint a portrait of a character's face, or if I wanted to render a full body piece. Even with backgrounds, usually I just stick to one layer because I like to simulate painting in the same way that I would if I was working on an actual canvas, a physical canvas. But for concept artwork, there's a lot of different parts that I'm working with that I want to make sure come out well and cohesive, and sometimes I need to adjust them individually from the sum of the whole concept. So that's what the layers come in. Particularly for this piece, I broke it up into this the dagger blade. There is the guard at the edge of the hilt. Then there's the hilt itself, and then there are the gem pieces, and all around different layers, so I can adjust them individually and don't have to worry about if I do this to this piece and it doesn't come out well, then I either have to adjust everything else around it to fit with what I like, or I have to just scrap it and start over. This video itself is just over an hour long. The painting itself actually took about 2 hours to do, but I sped the video footage up a tiny bit. I think I have it going twice as fast post-editing because I did want to put narration into this video, and yes, I know in the current YouTube algorithm sphere, longer watch times are good for your channel, but I don't feel like yammering on for 2 hours on a video of a dagger. Like if I was doing a more detailed piece, if I was doing like maybe I was drawing a level design, or I was drawing a piece that had buildings and backgrounds and multiple characters, then sure, I would be okay with yammering on for 2 hours. But right now, 1 hour is more than enough for me, especially since I'm recording this. At the time of this recording, I just got woken up like a couple hours before, so I'm still a bit tired. Well, not tired, but my brain's still waking up. So by this point, I've mapped out all the colors that I felt satisfied with. The vision that I had for the Enchanted Dagger was something of like a purplish blue tint with hints of gold, and so that's what I decided to go with. So once I got all of the base colors mapped out, now my next part of the process is adding shadows and highlights and starting to build the form and give the dagger its depth and decide on what extra details that I want to add. I didn't want to make this too intricate of a piece because one, this is just a mock-up for just an overall concept. This design might not even make it into the 3D stage. So this is just the 2D sketch concept of a dagger. I might adjust this when I go on to start rendering the 3D models for some of the props and other assets, or I might just scrap this design altogether if I'm just not feeling it. So I didn't want to go too hard on the design this time around. I just wanted to give a feel for kind of the aesthetic for how certain weapons would look and thinking about how it would fit into the overall aesthetic for the project. In reality, it's actually multiple projects that I'm working on, but the first project that I'm working on doesn't really require me to focus on, it doesn't require me to flesh out the look of weapons or character designs. It's the way that the project, and I'm not going to talk about it just yet because I'm still working on it. It's very much in the pre-production phase, and it's actually one of the newer projects that ties into another project that I've been working on for a while. It is a fantasy game that I've had in my head ever since I was a teenager, I think, and it wasn't until maybe 8 years ago that I decided that I wanted to turn this fantasy world that I had developed into. At first, I wanted to turn it into a novel or a comic series or something like that. But then I realized that I liked the concept better if I turned it into a game. And so I started working on that. And I was ready to take it out of pre-production until I realized that a lot of the things that I would need in order to start working on proof of concept or level prototypes, game, like, walkthrough, like a prototype that I could do a walkthrough of and record and show, so I could start working on the alpha state of the game. A lot of the stuff that I needed, it wasn't nearly as developed as I had initially believed, so I had to go back into the pre-production phase. And then while I was in the pre-production phase for my fantasy game, then I had another concept in mind for this game, that this dagger is one of, like, a piece of concept art for now. So now my other game, which I'm calling it Celestium Life, this game right now I'm just calling it Protean. I'm prioritizing Protean first because once that game is done, then I can tie it into the development of Celestium Life. So it's put one game project on hold, but honestly I'm happy about that because Protean, the concept that I have in mind for it and the idea that I have in mind for it, I'm very, very excited to work on it. And when I have more to show of in regards to the pre-production phase, then I will be very, very excited to share more about the project, what it's actually about, the point of the game, and at some point I hope to, if I can bring on a team of artists and other developers and game designers and coders, because while I do have experience in coding, I do have experience in 3D modeling, in rigging, simple animations. By far my strongest skill has been and probably always will be in 2D art, in character design, and in 2D prop and weapon design. So I don't mind working on the project by myself in the beginning. I am all for it because working on it by myself gives me a clearer vision of what I want going forward. But I would, if pre-production of the game goes as well as I'm hoping it will, at some point I would like to bring on people who actually have more expertise than me in the realm of, say, coding, of UX UI design, of weapon design or level design, because the scope of the project is to the point where realistically, if I wanted to get the game done in a reasonable amount of time, I would need probably a team of at least 10 people. And I have no problem with that. As much as I am very guarded about my projects and, they are my babies, it comes to a point where it's like, I just want to get this project done. And so I am willing to bring on different people who have different perspectives and different skill sets, different levels of expertise in different fields, so that they can maybe offer me something that I'm not looking at because I was doing it as a one-person show for the longest time. So I'm quite excited at the prospect of bringing on additional artists and designers and programmers. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out. So at this point, I've refined it a good amount. Now I've got the shadows mostly down the way I want it to. The colors I'm very satisfied with. The colors of the gems and blade I'm very satisfied with. I was going for I wanted to give it a purple undertone with like blue highlights because I wanted to the concept that I had in my head for this type of blade is that it's an enchanted dagger that was forged from a very strong type of gem or mineral that's imbued, either naturally imbued with or synthesized to be imbued with magical energy that can give any character who wields it either it gives the wielder some sort of arcane buff if they are, say, like a magic wielder or maybe a hybrid class of an arcane and so maybe some sort of, I don't know, melee DPS class or something like that. Or instead of a buff, the user who wields it against an arcane enemy, if they strike an arcane enemy, it deals additional, in addition to physical damage, it also drains them mana or their magic stores for a certain amount of time, something like that. That's the concept I had in mind. Or the person who wields it and uses it against an enemy, it deals additional arcane damage in addition to dealing physical damage. Like, I don't know, if let's say that it was imbued with frost magic, a person, someone wielding it, like say, let's just go basic bitch on this and say a rogue is wielding this kind of dagger, and they use it against an enemy. If it's imbued with frost magic, then in addition to the physical damage that the rogue deals to the enemy, frost damage is also dealt to the enemy for a certain amount of time, something like that. That's kind of the concept I had in mind. So I took that idea and wanted the dagger to look right out of the gate, look like it was very much magical, look like it was enchanted. And that's why I wanted to give the blade, I wanted the blade to be colorful. I didn't want the blade to look like it was made of just steel or something, which you can do that, obviously. But I really wanted to take the enchanted aspect and crank it up for this particular concept. I also wanted to give the dagger a bit of almost a royal or a regal feel. And again, just basic bitch fantasy example, like say it was elven, crafted by an elven race. I wanted to give it almost a regal feel with the, I guess you can call it bronze. It looks, and it's technically like it's like gold, but honestly, this is the hilt, the handle of the hilt, and the end of the dagger, or the blunt end of the dagger, is honestly it gives off more of a brass look. So, but just like that warm color, then purple and blues, at least for human history, are historically often viewed as royal colors, along with like gold or warm metals, particularly gold. They're associated with royalty and with wealth. So that's the aesthetic that I wanted to give. I wanted to give the impression that it was a very regal weapon that was crafted by a regal and magically gifted race. a little handle bit with the thread holding the handle together. That was probably, it didn't take that long, but it was was the most tedious part of drawing it. But at the same time, it was one of my favorite parts to draw because I could just do when my brain can zoom in on little details like that, it gets very happy. I also had fun adding in the little shadows to give the rope or the twine some depth. It's just little details like that. And I don't proclaim to be the greatest artist that ever lived. I am pretty technically gifted for sure, but there's also a ton of stuff that I am aiming to work on this year. I mentioned how before my greatest strength is being a character artist, being a character designer, and designing things like props and weapons and clothing. But for the longest time, one of my greatest weaknesses in terms of rendering 2D artwork, because I am such a, in my opinion, such a strong character designer, and I focused on that for most of my life up to this point. When it came to drawing environments or landscapes or architecture or things like furniture, mountain ranges, skies, weather, because I didn't put as much focus on that when I was younger, because when I was younger I felt that was really boring. It's like, I just want to draw people or humanoids and characters, like environments are so boring to me. These days I don't actually feel that way. My perspective on that has shifted quite a bit, where I love including environments and props and buildings, etc., into my more illustrative pieces, because these days to me it feels more complete for me to include those in my works, even to the point of the focus sometimes not even being the character but the environment itself or the prop itself or the object itself. Like still life portraits, people do still life portraits a lot. I've come to appreciate those a lot more as I progress throughout the years as an artist, because in a way, if you look at a lake or a forest clearing or a mountain, or if you look at a busy, well-lit neon street at night, or if you look at kind of a liminal space like an alleyway or a classroom after work hours, I've come to find a new appreciation for those sorts of scenery, and I very much appreciate artists who can sit down and take the time to work on stuff like that and to render these beautifully detailed pieces of convenience stores and of busy streets and of mountains and lakes and castles. And I think it's some of the most amazing pieces to see that someone will take the time and meticulously map out and render such an intricate scene. And I feel that, and this isn't always the case, like if you're a hobbyist who only has really an interest to draw certain things, and maybe it's more of a therapeutic thing for you, then that, learning to, like, if you strictly like to focus on drawing faces or portraits, and that's your stick, that's what appeals to you most as an artist. There's nothing wrong with sticking to that. because if that's what you like, because in the end, people have all these different opinions of what art is supposed to be, what an artist is supposed to do, and of course, with all the recent controversies, I'm not gonna give a platform to them here, but you know, especially if you've been in the art community and online in the art community for several years at this point, there's so many different opinions of what an artist should strive to do. And I've never been one to push that narrative, but I do appreciate and always support other artists wanting to branch out and try new things. It's like, I've always been intimidated by this, or I always thought that I wouldn't like to do this, but let me try something different. And that's where, tying back into the idea of branching out from character art, that's where I got to at that point, where it's I do like to do this. I feel like I'm pretty good at rendering character art. Most of the commissions that I receive are character commissions, but I also the commissions that I receive also include backgrounds sometimes, and I've found more and more over the years that the more that I can incorporate a background or like an intricate piece, the more excited I get. It's like, oh, I get to try out this thing, or I get to try out this type of lighting source, or I get to experiment with this texture. Because for the longest time, I did just stick to drawing these same things over and over again. One, because I had no interest in learning anything else, and two, because I wanted to get really, really good at being a character artist. But now that I feel that I've at least achieved some level of expertise in designing characters and creating character art in general, I've revisited the idea of I want to branch out. I want to start working on just rendering rocks or grass or working on painting a lake or even trying to paint like a bedroom or a busy street or an abandoned castle. Because not only is that a way for me to test out my skills and gives me something else to strive for. Because as an artist, I'm always striving to be better than what I was before. I'm always striving for my next painting to be rendered better than my last one. And that's not to say that, as soon as I realize that I've leveled up my skills, all of my older artwork it sucks, I don't like it. Yes, I've had that in the past, but that's not what I do these days. I've come to appreciate my art in all of its different stages, from when I first started at the age of 3 to becoming super interested in anime in the 90s and manga and practicing emulating the styles, and then getting more into a representational style of artwork with some manga anime influences, and then having heavy fantasy art influences. I grew up when World of Warcraft was becoming like the big thing. That was my favorite MMORPG, and you could probably see it if you look at a lot of my work today, just how big of an impact not just World of Warcraft, but the entirety of the Warcraft franchise had on me growing up as an adolescent. I didn't actually appreciate that influence until recent years, and yes, Blizzard has gone through its controversies because, especially after it was acquired by Activision, but we're not going to get into that right now because we're not talking about that. It's a whole conversation for another day, for sure. Again, if you're in the industry, you know what was happening. All the different stages of I can see me growing as an artist. I've come to appreciate every single stage, and I've come to appreciate the stage that I'm in right now, where I feel like, wow, where I have those moments where, wow, I made that. I actually rendered that. The me from 2014 who was first picking up that Wacom Intuos tablet and just rendering quick sketches in GIMP, trying to figure out what to do to paint, to transition from traditional art to start adding digital art into my repertoire of mediums that I would work with. The me of 2014 would give anything to be able to paint like I do now. it's very interesting how you get to a certain point where it's like, I want to get to this point of being able to render faces or do shading or color or have my colors look a certain way. And once you reach that level, there's always something else that you want to strive for. Where it's just like, cool, I made that. I made it to this milestone. That's awesome. But I also want to do this, and this. And it feels like a double-edged sword sometimes, where it feels like the artist's curse of you're never satisfied. But at the same time, I really appreciate it because it always gives me something to strive for. I feel like the moment that I don't have the desire to grow as an artist is the moment that I stop doing it. And because I always have that desire, I always have that drive to improve my craft, I will literally be creating until the day I am no longer on this multiplane. Weird side note, I hope the audio comes out well on this narration because I'm recording it on my phone. I don't have the proper cords to set up the mic that I have right now. So I have to record this on my phone, which is fine in and of itself because the audio quality on my phone always comes out well if I do narration. So I don't have a problem with that. I'm just hoping, because I'm moving my hand around a lot while I'm recording, so I hope that doesn't screw up the audio too much and you can hear me. We'll find out. That's a problem for editing. So at this point, more than halfway done. I'm mapped out all the colors, got the lighting how I want it for the most part. Now I'm really at the refining stage of this concept. And again, I don't proclaim to be the greatest artist in existence. When it comes to prop design, I actually do still have a lot to learn, and there are many things that I have the desire to improve upon. I feel like as an artist, I only got the handle on lighting per se. I feel like I only got a handle on that maybe in the last 3 years, which is it's saying something. I've literally been drawing since I was 3, and yes, I've taken long breaks. I've taken like maybe months off. One time I think I even took like a year or 2 off from creating, but I've always gone back to it and I've always worked to improve my craft. But I didn't feel like it really clicked in my head from a technical standpoint. My skills didn't really click for me until about 2018, because I think there was, what was it, the latter half of 2017, I was frustrated with a lot of things in my life. That was a time period where I just, the year prior, I'd lost a friend, I was feeling hopeless, major mental health issues, feeling lost, and like nothing was working out the way I wanted it to. And so what I did is that, I don't want to give up on art. I still want to do it for a living, but I don't feel that I'm technically skilled enough to enter the fields that I want to enter, which has been the gaming industry specifically. And so what I did is that for like 4 or 5 months, I would get up, turn on my laptop, and I would just draw. I would do nothing but draw. And I wouldn't even draw in color, because at that time, I felt that my color theory skill, like my skills in color theory were very, very weak at that point, which is hilarious to think about because I used color all the time in my traditional pieces, and I would use color all the time in my digital pieces as well when I started doing digital art more. But I felt like there was something missing. I felt that there was a big gap in my fundamental knowledge as an artist. So what I did is, for about maybe 4 or 5 months straight, I would do nothing but render in grayscale. And I wouldn't even touch color because I figured that in order for me to improve, if I do feel that my fundamentals are so lacking, then I need to forget everything that I've done up to this point and taught myself as an artist, and I need to go back to working with values and shades and highlights. That's all that I should be focusing on right now if I want to improve my art from a more representational perspective. And so that's what I did. And it wasn't until 2018, because I had this technique at one point where I would render in grayscale, and this is when I was experimenting with Krita. I would render in grayscale, and then I would render in grayscale in Paint Tool Sai, and then I would take the fully rendered grayscale piece and open it up in Krita, and then I would overlay in Krita the color that I wanted to add. And it was a good shortcut. It was a good little trick that I liked to use because I already had the values completely rendered from working in grayscale, and by overlaying in color, it gave the appearance, more or less, that I was able to render in color. And that was a good workaround for a while when I still wasn't quite comfortable reintroducing color palettes into my paintings. But I remember distinctly there was this one painting I did at the beginning of 2018, I think it was like January or February, and there was a character portrait of one of my webcomic characters, Alicia, and I'm sure most people don't, like, nobody really remembers this. Even if you follow me, you probably don't remember. But in the 2010s, I was on DeviantArt. In the 2000s and 2010s, I was on DeviantArt, and I had a webcomic that I posted on there, and Alicia was one of the characters. In fact, she was if you look up Alicia Evan on DeviantArt, that's my account. And that's the character I'm talking about, is Alicia. And with this particular painting that I did, I was starting out in grayscale, but then I decided, let me try working in color. And so I did, and that was the first time where I really felt like my practice and my going back to the basics paid off, because I was able to render that in color, and because I was practicing on values at the time, and lighting, shadow, and proportions, and it was in looking at that first painting of 2018 compared to where I started a few months prior in 2017, it almost didn't look like the same artist. I was blown away by that, and that's when I was like, okay, now I got some shit down, let me figure some other stuff out. And from there I was able to start incorporating color again. I started working on being more bold and more in your face with the colors that I would use. At the time I was still very washed out because I would start with a gray background and then build color on top of that, so the color was very desaturated, which is what I was going for at the time. But then it got to a point where it's like, okay, I want to be better at lighting, and I wanted to make stuff look even more realistic and get even more into representationalism. So I'm very much a semi-realist artist, and there are times where I take artistic license with the paintings that I render, because I like to have fun. I will rim light the fuck out of something if my brain can't figure out how to make the lighting work. I will just add rim light and call it a good day. And then but it wasn't until it's like even in 2018 where I was like, okay, now I'm getting somewhere. It wasn't until maybe even in the last 3 years, like maybe 2020, 2021, that I really felt like I was at a skill level where it's like, okay, I actually kind of sort of know my shit. Like at one point I'd like to say that I'm a good enough of an artist that I can fake like I'm a good artist. So it's like I can fake like I know what I'm doing without actually know what I'm doing. But nowadays it's like, okay, I actually know what I'm doing. There's a reason, I know the reason why I'm putting this highlight here, or why I'm adding this little bit of color in this spot that would seem a bit nonsensical. I know why I'm deepening the shadows as much as they are. I know why I don't want the black to actually just be black. Like it's, all that stuff that's built up over the years, and to the point where I actually kind of feel like I know what I'm doing as an artist. Again, I still have a ton of things that I want to learn, but I feel like these days I'm more of the artist that I want to be than I ever have been before. And I'm very happy that I didn't give up so that I could get to that point. Okay, so you can see here, I pretty much, like, the rendering is almost done. What I normally do when I want to create something that's more or less symmetrical on both sides, I usually just put, that guideline that you see there. I usually put a guideline through the middle, and then I take one side and mirror it on the other side inside. But when I first started working on the dagger, I was like, I'll be fine this time around. And then I was like, the dagger looks a little crooked. It looks slanted. And then I was like, well, yeah, you dingus, because you didn't put the guideline in the center to make sure your shit stayed symmetrical. Put the guideline there. You should have done that from the beginning, and you could have avoided this problem. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up the guideline and then flipping the blade over because the blade was crooked. And then once I adjusted the blade, I realized, the handle needs to be moved over a bit more because it's off center. And so that's what I did. And you can see how, this is where the enchanted part comes in on the blade, where I started doing, the symbols don't really mean anything in particular. At that point, I was just drawing symbols that I felt would look cool, but that's supposed to be like an enchantment going down the center of the blade that, is the enchantment imbues the dagger with whatever arcane properties it possesses. Another thing, because I'm so used to doing commissions, I'm so used to doing used to doing illustrative works, or to do intricate and fully rendered pieces. Sometimes I forget that. And I forgot that at the first half of working on this Dagger, even, that concept artwork doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be completely 100% refined. It doesn't have to look like a classical painting from the Renaissance. It's just concept artwork. You can leave it messy. It's okay. And so about halfway through, I remembered that, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't have to make this look hyper realistic. I could just sketch out, leave some of the details sketchy, because that's, in the end, it's just a concept. It's not meant to be the final form per se of the idea that I have in mind. So that's something I'm still struggling with in terms of doing concept artwork. Even though I do concept artwork all the time, I have to remind myself it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be an idea you can work off of. Stop spending 5 hours on something that should only take you 1. And it's the funny thing too, is that because when I was working for other clients, I haven't worked on any super big name projects. I've been commissioned to do little bits of concept artwork for underground TTRPG games and for gaming companies. And I was actually doing concept artwork for a friend at one point who, if you know Mike Pondsmith, creator of Cyberpunk. He's the creator of the Cyberpunk RPG, and then CD Projekt Red worked on Cyberpunk, the video game adaptation of Cyberpunk. But the funny thing is that this friend was actually good friends with Mike Pondsmith and had brought me on to be the lead artist for a TV show that they wanted Mike Pondsmith to do voice acting for, and they wanted me to do concept artwork, and I thought that was so cool. I never actually got to meet Mike Pondsmith, unfortunately, and then the project fell through. And then the pandemic started, a whole bunch of other stuff came up, and then the project just didn't go through. So I ended up not actually being the lead artist on the project. But so it's not like when working with other creators or working for clients that I can't render things quickly for concept artwork. It's just when I'm working on my own projects, because I don't have the same pressure to deliver stuff on a super tight deadline, and so sometimes I will forget that, hey, this is still concept artwork for a project that you still want to get out in a reasonable time frame. And so sometimes I will just forget, and I'll just start rendering things super detailed and making it very refined, and then I have to kick myself in the ass and remember, hey, we're not here for that right now. Just do the sketch, get the design out the way that you want to, make it something that you're satisfied with, can work off, and move on to the next thing. You see, I'm almost done. This is where my favorite part came in. After I've finished, all the little lighting bits, highlights and stuff. Does anyone else have this issue where you get to a point where the painting is almost done, or whatever it is that you're working on is almost done, and at that point it's just like cleaning up little details for the most part? But because it's almost done, but there's still more work to do, you're not quite sure what little details to tweak. Does anyone get stuck in that phase? Because I feel like that happens to me more often than not. Especially when I'm working on something to a very refined degree. It was just a quick sketch or a quick concept, and I'm not too hung up on that final stage. But when it gets to, well, not final stage, the penultimate stage of it being done, And when I get to that part where it's just like trying to clean up all the details, I'm like, something is missing, but I don't know what. The gem on the blunt end of the handle, it actually intended it for it to be a more of a secular piece, but as I was adding the lighting in, I actually like the idea of it having more of a flat top or a concave top. I got so irritated on this last part. I was just trying to do that one little curlicue, and for some reason Paint Tool Side was being a douche and wouldn't let me undo it. I had to go back and physically click on the undo button multiple times. And I had to redo it every single time. It was just like, oh my god, I'm almost fucking done. Just let me do it twice. Ugh, but you know, sometimes it happens. Just little frustrations. You can see here how I'm adding highlights to the sharp ends of the blade. So I was placing where I wanted some of the brightest parts of the light to go. And this is where my favorite part comes in. Had a lot of fun working on the highlights for it. And like, here's where the enchanted aspect of the enchanted dagger comes in. So I just started adding in highlights where I would look like there was this magical mist almost. Not quite a mist, it's light, so it's not mist, but it kind of looks like magical mist surrounding the enchantment markings or the inscription, and then on the brightest parts that I highlighted the blade with. And then to get the glowing effect is what I did inside, is that on a separate layer I painted in the parts that I wanted to be kind of the enchanted lighting with the airbrush tool, and then I blended it a bit with the blur tool, and then to get the kind of glowing effect I changed the filter effect from normal to luminosity and shade, and that's what made the color really pop for me without it overshadowing the details underneath. And I like that even more because it ended up giving the blade a slightly different hue that I didn't know that I had in mind. But once I added that effect to the layer, then I was like, yes, that is what I pictured in my mind. I just didn't know that I needed it, but now that I have it, it looks great. I will stick with this, yes. It was just a quick, simple dagger concept. Only took a couple hours. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I was messing with the hue to see if I wanted it to be more of a warmer or a cooler lighting effect. I was messing around. Did I want like luminosity and shade, or did I want just shade? Did I want a multiply effect, overlay, etc., etc.? I ended up going with luminosity and shade because I liked the way that looked the best. And then that's the final version. So thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for sticking through. Thank you for sticking through to the end. If you drew along for the entirety of this video, I would love to see what you created. You can send me, if you're on Threads, I am Akuma-san on Threads. It's the same spelling as my name on YouTube. Come find me on Threads and share with me what you rendered, whether you tried to recreate this dagger design exactly, whether you did something a little bit different. Maybe you worked on a completely different weapon type, or maybe you didn't do a weapon at all. Maybe you just wanted to body double with me to work on your own piece. I would love to see it. I love the art community that I've been able to find and connect with since I've been on Threads. So if you have a Threads account, feel free to come follow me. I'll follow you back, and I would love to see what you came up with. So thank you so much for watching this video and for supporting my channel. If you would be so kind as to give this video a like, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you would like to see more of what I create on this particular channel, whether it's time-lapse videos or a Let's Draw video like this, or maybe a tutorial if I decided to use start a tutorial series, feel free to hit that subscribe button and to turn on your notifications. I would also greatly appreciate that as well. And if you would like to throw some monetary support my way, I do have a Ko-Fi account that is linked down in my description. It's, again, Akuma-san's the same spelling. Feel free to buy me a boba, or you can become a quote-unquote boba badass to be a monthly member to gain access to member-only posts and content that I post on my general art Ko-Fi page. So thanks again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.